Alright, so here's to the first episode of Reviewdle, everybody. Let's hope this goes relatively well. I went through the stuff in my room. Some backstory to me is I have a ton of controllers. Collecting controllers is my hobby, and I figured that before I start buying more for this channel for the sake of reviews, I'm going to start out with some that I already own. And for this video, I figured since it was going to be the first video that I published to this channel, I might as well review the first controller that I bought for my computer back when I first got my computer in the summer of 2018. So here it is, the ZDC wired gaming controller. It's USB only, no wireless functionality, no Bluetooth, none of what you may come to expect, but that's because it's cheap. It's 25 bucks. Now, as far as compatibility goes, this works with Windows XP through 10. It works with Android, and also, curiously enough, works with PlayStation 3. Something you will notice in a lot of these third-party controllers I wish to review is that they will support PS3 of all things, but not like PS4. And I think it's just because of some old tech that Windows still supports, but the PlayStation 4 doesn't, that the PlayStation 3 just for whatever reason happened to. Now, moving right along from the PlayStation 3 notes, this does have a very PlayStation 3-esque design, or I guess you could just compare it to all DualShock controllers as a whole. You've got the two analog sticks right next to each other, and they've got the PlayStation style D-pad of the little, I don't know how I would describe, it's semi-rectangular but with a little angle on one end. You've seen it before, you know what I mean. If you're watching this video, you know what I mean. Something that upon immediately opening it and putting it in your hand is the shell is very, it's not great. It's extremely smooth, extremely cheap plastic, but it feels sturdy enough, I guess, unless you have Hulk hands. And one thing that I think was kind of nice is, though there's no real bonuses aside from the instruction booklet inside of the minimalist, I guess is a way I would kindly describe the very cheap packaging, is that they give you this little receiver. As I said before, it's not wireless, so it's an adapter for you to plug into your phone to use it, because it is compatible with Android still, just no Bluetooth. One thing that sucks about having this is it's a nice gesture, but it's USB, micro USB adapter. I can't list you a single smartphone that's come out in the past 2 or 3 years that still uses micro USB. It's usually USB type C is the standard, but I mean, if that's your grift, you can take a closer look at the adapter, and you notice that even the converter part looks very cheaply made. There's only little bumps to hold it in. There's most micro USB cables have little sort of claws that come out when they're inserted into a phone or whatever port they're injected to kind of hang on. This just kind of it just feels it looks like it would wobble loose. But that's enough about the adapter. Let's go back to the controller. Button quality is okay. It's actually it's something you'd come to expect from this controller that doesn't feel the greatest, especially for this price point. But they bounce back just fine. The face buttons, they feel fine. D-pad is pretty terrible. It's very, very mushy, but I wouldn't expect it to be much more, because this is trying to be an all-around controller, and most all-around controllers nowadays have very substandard D-pads, because 3D games fill the gamescape, if you were to say. And so the emphasis on a good D-pad isn't just, it's not really a priority amongst many controller developers. The analog sticks, on the other hand, feel surprisingly nice. They're nice and smooth. They got low resistance to them. A lot of cheap controllers, you'll notice, especially the more iffy ones, they feel like I have no resistance behind the analog sticks, and that leads to it being very slippery feeling. But these give you plenty of pushback, so that everything that you do with them, any direction you push with them, feels completely intentional, like you're in control. The menu buttons are fine. You can't really do a menu button too wrong unless it was, say, the Odroid Go Advances menu buttons that kind of get stuck in the shell when you push it in and take a while to pop out. But none of that happens here. It's fine. It's fine. It's not great. The bumpers are... I can't tell if they're good or not, because when you're resting your hands on them and pushing them, they feel fine, but depending on the positioning of your hands, they may be pretty uncomfortable. They may be a bad experience, because you can only push them inward. You can't just push them from any side. If you try and push it on the outer sides of them, they just don't go down, or don't register. And lastly, you got the triggers, and this is something weird I found. The Amazon listing and the instructions all say that these are linear triggers, but that's not true. They are actually analog. I know this because when you use joy.cpl on PC, they register, they're pressure sensitive. You could play something like Mario Sunshine with this, or some racing game. Name your racing game here. I'm not into them, so I couldn't tell you. But I guess if you're playing GTA and you want a better level of control for the speed of your car, there you go. Something you wouldn't expect in a $25 controller. But let's go on to feeling it in-game. First off, I'm just going to show some footage of me playing Mega Man ZX for, originally for the DS, right now for the 0/ZX Legacy Collection. It's not too good. As I said, the D-pad isn't a good experience overall. The buttons are fine, luckily, so that remedies the problems a little bit, but it's just not too great. I don't want to brag, but I'd say that most of the good that's coming from my gameplay here is not from the controller, but just from me being very used to how this game plays, because I play this game very often. Now here to a 3D game, which this is more well-suited for, I'd say. A Hat in Time. Yeah, I'd say this actually feels pretty good. There are a couple of minor gripes, though. This controller does have rumble, but it's very harsh. So when I do something such as pick up pawns in this game, it's kind of distracting, if I were to say anything. I would rather just turn it off in game settings, but if you want it on, just know that you may have to deal with it being a little harsher than you may expect. And another issue with this is, while I like the design of the analog sticks, I think it's very nice to have the big, huge concave craters into it. The plastic that they used on the top of these analog sticks is really cheap and really smooth. They give it a kind of somewhat rugged design, as if it would be kind of grippy, but it's just not. And so what this leads to is you've got a big area inside of the thumbstick that is just completely slippery because of really cheap plastic they used, and it just kind of, your thumb might slip off it a couple times. I know it did for me, and that is an issue. But other than that, you know, trigger feels alright. It doesn't feel great, but you know, it gets the job done for diving in this game. I guess it's not the worst experience you could have with this game. I'd still play with any other controller that I own, pretty much, that I prefer using. But I could live with this if I needed to. I wouldn't suggest it, but yeah, if you want to play Hat in Time with this game, go ahead. Alright, and so I didn't expect to like this controller that much, looking back on it a few years after having bought it, but honestly, it is not the worst thing ever. It's responsive, you know, it's wired only, but if you can put up with that, and you need a really cheap controller, I would still suggest you buy a different controller, just because there's better options for this price point. If I had to give this controller a rating out of 10, I'd say it gets a 5. For its price point, it's good, it's not great. There are definitely some other ones I could look to that are maybe only a couple dollars more expensive and are infinitely better, but it's also not a bad investment if this is like something you'd be into. It's got rumble, it's got analog triggers, it's got alright enough analog sticks. So yeah, there's my first episode on this channel. The ZDC wired gamepad for Windows, PS3, and Android. If you like this, maybe give me a comment, give me a like, just tell me something you might be interested in seeing on this channel in the future. I intend for this to be a primarily gaming controller heavy channel. I don't really have an interest in reviewing much more, or I do have an interest in reviewing other things and don't feel like I have the expertise to. But I've got plenty. There's more than plenty of weird third-party controllers on Amazon and in my room for me to fill videos with. So if you see a controller that seems weird, seems like something you might want to hear from me about, comment it down below. That's all for this video. Hopefully see you in the next one. Have a good day.